Reliable estimates indicate that between 4 and 10% of the high school population is LGBT, meaning in a public school system there are at least 40,000 to 100,000 LGBT folks.
So my high school was a Lutheran high school, so it was pretty much like if you're gay, don't talk about it, definitely don't tell anyone kind of a thing.
It was weird thinking that like, oh, I like boys and girls and like everyone, because it just wasn't talked about when I was in high school and stuff. Like, there was barely anyone out in my high school, and the people that were like, extremely bullied.
In high school, there wasn't really any resources for LGBT people, I guess, or education in that aspect, like LGBT books.
According to 2011 findings from the Williams Institute, the transgender population represents about 0.3% of the American adults. However, in a survey of 2,000 Americans conducted by the Public Religion Research Institute, 30% of Americans still can't define it.
Cisgender refers to my gender identity and gender expression lining up with what I was assigned at birth. So I was assigned female at birth. I identify as female both in my gender identity and my gender expression.
I'm bisexual. It's like liking someone that is the same, like identifies the same sexually as you and also differently as you.
When you say you are something other than what you're assigned at birth, when you say you're off the gender binary, you have to realize that's all acceptable.
Nearly a fifth of LGBT students are physically assaulted because of their sexual orientation, and over a tenth are assaulted because of their gender expression.
So in 2009, data was collected. In 2010, MSU released its campus climate report around gender and sexuality. And the report found that students are experiencing heightened levels of harassment in classroom environments compared to their heterosexual and or cisgender peers.
My ex-boyfriend, we worked together for a couple years. It was about halfway through a relationship where I finally felt comfortable like coming out to him. I wasn't believed, like I wasn't taken seriously, like, oh no, you're not. You're dating me, a guy, you're not bi.
Wanting to be able to feel safe and talking about their identities and talking about their frustrations with parents and, homophobic comments and things from professors and transphobic comments and things from professors. It was nice for them to be able to have someone that they could, share these frustrations with.
Other bi people, just one of the huge problems that I always encounter when talking about my sexuality is just instantly being sexualized. Just like, oh, so, you want to do it with everything. You like everything and everyone.
An ally is typically any non-LGBT person who supports and stands up for the rights of LGBT people, though LGBT people can be allies, such as a lesbian who is an ally to a transgender person.
The ally aspect is probably the most important out of the LGBTQIA community.
When allyship, I think, really requires behavior and action, so it's again sort of that noun-verb dichotomy.
Being, a straight or cisgender person who's an ally to the LGBT community, but you can be, an LGBT person and also be an ally to other identities within the community.
I think people have brought up really good points about like ally as a noun versus ally as a verb, and we often use ally as a noun, right? Like people get to call themselves ally when really people within the community should be calling you an ally.
Your privilege as a heterosexual person or a cisgender person to make people of the LGBT community feel more comfortable and more accepted by society would be the biggest thing I would say.
And ally is sort of just like this thing you sort of are, right? But advocate is really what you do and what you go about changing. And it's the people who are really here for me and my rights and my liberation.
It's understanding that your privilege can be used to aid somebody else's struggle.
It's really being in solidarity with folks who are different from yourself. LGBT person, you don't have those resources. You're very often, not always, but you're often raised by straight parents or cisgender parents, and so you don't have this you don't have as strong as support systems. It doesn't help that because LGBT folks are still so marginalized and silenced that even in high school textbooks you don't read about LGBT successes.
This has to be sort of an early childhood education piece, right? So talking about people with different sexualities at a really young age, right? So we often hear about in American culture, like a gay uncle piece, right? And so thinking, how do we help children understand this, right? And like, that would require talking about sex to begin with, and we don't really do that well in this country, in a high school context in particular, or middle school context. And we know that doesn't really work, but yeah, we still do it.
Sometimes it's important to note that people during certain time periods who were gay made a huge impact.
Things like Oscar Wilde and writing and poetry and things, you don't learn that he was gay, and you don't learn other pieces about LGBT folks. You just learn about their achievements, but you don't necessarily learn to connect, oh, this person is like myself.
World War II. There was also a crackdown on gay people because they were saying, oh, they're communist, and that's called the Lavender Scare. So like there's like certain parts of history where like gay people in the queer community are like right there in that history, having a big impact, and I think it's important to include that.
MSU is really lucky in that we have about 14 LGBT student organizations, and we serve to cultivate community and educational opportunities for folks on campus, right? So we support those who are marginalized by their sexuality and or gender identity, as well as prepare students to thrive in our diverse world.
Use college gems as a vehicle to promote diversity and inclusion and acceptance of all types of people, regardless of your race or your gender or your sexual orientation.
To be an LGBT peer leader to young folks, because LGBT older students, to be mentoring younger students and sort of, teaching them like, how to exist, how to thrive, how to navigate the difficulties of having, coming out to parents or family members, how to navigate, getting, your name changed or seeking out hormones and getting the gender marker on your driver's license changed, or even getting the gender marker on your student ID and things changed.
You can teach, but you can always learn too from your students. You can, your students can be teachers too. I feel like we can all learn and teach each other different things.
Person who says something hateful or who is ignorant, there's somebody out there who also is compassionate and wants to help. And if you have been alienated in a space on campus, know that there is another safe space there for you.
It's so much easier to live without having to hide such a big part of yourself.